Hey everyone, it's Sam here at Model Chili Scale Models, and here I have Bandai's 1/6 scale Shadow Stormtrooper, which is far too big to fit on the camera as you can see, but I think you get the idea. Now this is a 12-inch figure kit, and it's basically just a recolor of the previous white Stormtrooper that came out a while ago. So it's gone from white to shiny black, and it still has the issue of a helmet that's perhaps a little too big and a figure that's a little too skinny, but I'm willing to overlook that just for a chance to build a nice 12-inch Shadow Trooper to add to the collection. So let's start by having a look inside the box. Alright, so we have the instruction leaflet. Another fairly standard Bandai construction. I think this is probably the same as the normal Stormtrooper version. There's not going to be a lot of differences, except for the painting guide at the back. And I've got first bag, silver and black mouldings, and water slide decals. Here's some of the shoulders and hips. And the super shiny black plastic. And there's the sticker versions of the decals. And all of the joint pieces and clear parts for the stand. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is remove all of the Under Armour pieces. That's all of these bits. And then spray them all a matte black. And now I'm just going to clean up each part just by carefully cutting off the excess sprue. Just so it's nice and flush. And now that everything's cleaned up, I'm going to give each part a layer of Tamiya's matte black from a spray can. And I don't record this step because I have to do it outside for better ventilation, because these sprays are quite smelly and get everywhere. So I'll be back in just a second. Alright, so the next step is to paint all of the silver parts. And they are moulded in silver and they look okay, but upon close inspection you can kind of see a lot of mould lines, and it does look a bit too plasticky for my liking, so I'm just going to give these a quick spray with Tamiya's gloss aluminium from a spray can. And now with the aluminium applied, I want to put a flat coat over some of the helmet pieces, like the mouthpiece and some of the bits around the helmet. But before I do that, I just need to apply a couple of decals to some of the parts around the helmet, which are a few lines around the front, and there's some lines bits around the back as well. So I'll put those down first, and then I'll put a flat coat over the top of those. But for the eyepieces themselves, I'm just going to do a nice shiny gloss coat for those. So I'll be using Tamiya's TS13 Clear for that. Alright, so with the Under Armour pieces painted and the silver pieces painted, I've decided to leave the shiny black armour unpainted. I think this looks pretty appropriate for Star Wars, Stormtroopers in particular. This kind of plasticky, glossy look. And I kind of like how it's kind of scraped and a little bit worn. It really reminds me of how Darth Vader's helmet looked, especially in A New Hope. It was all pretty tatty, so I think that's going to be fine. And so now I just need to start putting everything together. Alright, so I've got a little peg here on this helmet strap thing that's been particularly difficult to get in, and I remember this being an issue on the last build I did, so I'm just going to quickly fix that up just by nicking the end of it off, just making it a bit easier to get in. Hopefully. Alright, so for the blaster holster that goes around his belt, I don't just want a plain black, I kind of want a bit of colour to it. So what I'm going to do is mix black, Vallejo Model Air black with Vallejo Model Air German red brown, just to try and get a bit of a leather colour to it. And then I'll see how it goes from there. And now for the blasters, I'm going to do a base coat of Vallejo Model Air metallic black. Alright, so there's the metallic black applied. Now I want it to look a bit more worn and give it a bit more depth, so I'm just going to apply over the whole lot, Vallejo, just basic black wash. And that will tone down the sort of glittery metallic effect and give all the recessed areas a bit more depth, while keeping the raised areas a bit more metallic. And with the wash applied, I'm going to do a bit of dry brushing using Vallejo Model Air Steel. So for that I've just got a large flat brush, dab some silver in, and then wipe most of it away. I just want trace amounts left on the brush. And now I'm just going to lightly brush over all of the surfaces of the blasters, just to highlight all of the edges and to give them a worn metallic look. Alright, so now I'm going to add a little bit of a rust wash, not over large areas, just over some of the fixtures and fastenings on these blasters. And for that I'm using Vallejo's Model Wash Light Rust. And this just adds another layer of texture to some of these metallic parts. And now I'm just going to do one final coat of the black wash, just to blend everything back together. Alright, so I've just put a coat of flat clear on the holster. Now what I'm going to do is just scuff it up a bit with this sanding sponge, just to go over and put in a bit of texture and a bit of wear and tear. Alright, so before I finally put everything together, I'm going to do a little bit of weathering. Now, I'm not going to do any outdoor weathering, so there's going to be no browns and earth colours and all of that. I'm just basically going to use a bit of black, just like I do on my normal Clone Trooper and Stormtrooper builds, just as a bit of like oil or scuffing around the armour. A bit of black grey just to mix up the colours a little bit. And also might try a little bit of gunmetal for the silver chipping. Now, I have seen online a lot of pictures of Shadow Troopers with silver chipping around the edges of the armour, and I'm a bit confused about that because I certainly didn't imagine the Stormtrooper armour to be silver and then painted white, and you certainly don't see any chipping on Darth Vader's armour, so I have doubts as to whether this is actually silver and then painted black. I was under the impression it was just moulded black in whatever plasticky steel material that they use in the universe. But the thing is, it looks kind of cool, and it makes the black look a bit worn and weathered, so I'll attempt a little bit and see how it looks, and then I can always just wipe it away if I don't like it. So first I'm just going to start with the black, and I'm going to use the old sponge technique, so I'm going to dip this little slice of sponge in the black paint, and then just dab it in certain areas for a nice random appearance. Yeah, so that's the black and the dark grey, or the black grey applied, and I think that's probably enough. I might even bring this back a little bit and clean it up once it's dry, but I don't think I'll be adding the silver. I think that's probably more than enough. I don't want to overdo it, but I think that looks pretty cool so far. Alright, so he's almost ready for display, but as you can imagine, this thing is a fingerprint magnet. So I'm just going over with this cloth and just wiping off as much smudges and fingerprints that I can manage. These shoulder pads are really loose, not quite as firm fitting as the Clone Trooper variants. Alright, so there he is all wrapped up, and I really wish I could get them all in the shot, but my camera just can't go back far enough on this desk. And that's the trouble with building these oversized models. But anyway, I've had fun building the kit, as usual for these Bandai products. They're just absolutely flawless in terms of quality and fit. No problems whatsoever, apart from the issues that I mentioned at the start with the proportions of the actual figure maybe being slightly off. Looking a bit too thin and the head looking a bit too wide. But, you know, once he's in certain poses and looking at him from certain angles, you really don't see it being much of an issue. And I'm pretty happy with how it came out. It's been a relatively simple and straightforward build as far as figure kits go. Definitely not as complex as some of my previous figure kits, mainly just because I didn't need to paint any of the armour. And I didn't do any clear coats over the top because I didn't want to diminish the shiny effect of the black. And that does mean the acrylic scuffing and weathering I did is not protected by a clear coat, so in theory it could be scraped or rubbed off with too much handling. But I don't expect I'll be handling this much. I pretty much just put them in one pose and then put them on the shelf to display and leave them alone. But that is something to think about if you're considering doing this kit. Alright, so zooming in for a closer look at some of the details. There's the helmet there, and I can still see fingerprints all over it, so that's nice. But looking online, there's so many different variations of Shadow Trooper helmets. Some of them have silver chin piece, some of them have the blue stripes down the cheeks. Some of them don't have the silver wedges at the top of the helmet. There's many different variations you can think of. It doesn't seem to be one consistent colour pattern for the helmets. So I pretty much just went with what the kit provided and just a few silver highlights of my own. I decided not to do the chin silver. I think it looks quite good with just the black, matte black chin piece. Yeah, it's going down to the back there. Not a lot going on at the back, just the standard back chest piece. And thermal detonator canister. The plastic stand does come off the kit, in case you're wondering. He does stand perfectly well on his own, but that's just a bit of extra support should he decide to take a tumble. And I'm really happy with how the holster came out. It was just a chance to do a bit of texturing and a bit of different colour for the kit. I think it came out. It's quite a nice addition. And the blaster itself, I always enjoy doing these. Doing the metallic blacks and the silver dry brushing and the black wash and all the little rust bits. Comes out looking fairly realistic. At least I hope so anyway. And the black levels are having fun with this kit, that's for sure. But as we go down, a bit more scuffing on the boots, just to indicate a bit of weathering. I imagine this trooper is just sort of doing ship-to-ship action, so he's rubbing up against hardware and blaster fire and stuff like that, so he hasn't got a lot of dirt or vegetation or blood all over him. And here he is next to the Stormtrooper Commander that I did almost 2 years ago now. Man, time flies. But I think a Storm Shock Trooper would be a good next build, although I have done one in 1/12 scale. A 1/6 version would be a nice addition, I think. But I hope this video build has been informative and enjoyable at least. And as always, if you've got any comments or questions, please leave them below. And if you want to see more of these Star Wars Bandai builds, then don't forget to subscribe and mash that notification button. And as usual, I'll be putting up photos of the build on my various social media channels, so you can also see those in the links below. And until next time, thanks for watching, and take care.